It truly was the worst possible day for the giant chickens to choose to attack. And ironically, out of all the places on the map, they chose this one. These hideous creatures with matted feathers, commonly known by the folk name Beltos, were a species of mutated bird dangerous beyond imagination. Their appearance might seem silly, but make no mistake, they were wild and ferocious beasts ready to destroy everything in their path. However, the entire flock of Beltos quickly perished, unable to even struggle at the hands of one person, a seemingly harmless young man. That's right, they died quietly without a sound under the mysterious yet overwhelmingly dominant power of our protagonist. The Ascendant's elite warriors dispatched to deal with the beasts were stunned into silence when they arrived at the scene. They were still reeling in confusion, wondering what on earth had just wiped out an entire flock of Beltos in an instant. With their limited understanding, they speculated that perhaps a special Ascendant had silently acted before their arrival. But that theory sounded absurd. Who could possibly annihilate an entire horde of monsters with a single blow without even revealing themselves? As far as Ascendants in this unlucky and dangerous country were concerned, no one had ever demonstrated the ability to destroy a whole flock of monsters in the blink of an eye. What they didn't know was that the person behind it all was the humble young man we've been talking about. Yes, the mysterious individual who annihilated the Beltos was him, our young man. His name is Eat. Currently, he is the owner of a small, peaceful eatery that by chance happened to be right in the middle of the area, attacked by the feathered monsters today. Normally, Eat couldn't care less about fighting or these kinds of attacks. He only cared about his kitchen and his customers. Unfortunately, Beltos meat was an excellent ingredient. So tender, fragrant, and irresistibly delicious that Eat couldn't ignore it. So he took down the entire flock, chose the best cut of meat, and brought it back to his kitchen to prepare a new dish. Just as Eat was about to start preparing his special dish with the freshly acquired ingredient, an uninvited guest unexpectedly appeared at the diner's door. It turned out to be a member of the Ascendant Association, here on a mission to check on the situation and the well-being of the shop owner after the recent attack. The purpose was to confirm if he was safe after the fierce encounter with the Beltos. Eat was completely unharmed. In fact, to be honest, he had been through things like this so many times that today was just like a regular Tuesday for him. Hearing that no one was injured and that most residents had been evacuated in time, the association representative breathed a sigh of relief as the damage was almost nil. Suddenly, his keen sense of smell kicked in as an extraordinary aroma wafted from within Eat's cozy diner, stimulating all his senses. That rich, captivating scent originated from the small but perfectly clean and tidy kitchen where Eat was preparing his special dish. The aroma was so enticing that the guest from the association couldn't resist the intense craving welling up inside him. And if the restaurant was still open, Eat had no reason to refuse a potential customer, right? Upon stepping inside, the guest was immediately impressed by the clean, tidy, and warm atmosphere, as if he had stepped into a Hollywood movie scene. He instantly felt at home, and shortly after asked to see the menu before ordering. However, contrary to expectations, Eat had no menu. All dishes were created from fresh available ingredients of the day, truly a special of the day. And today, that special was grilled Beltos steak. Just hearing the name of the monster species, the guest immediately became wary. Beltos were the very creatures that had just attacked this area. Of course, the reputation for defeating them was still attributed to Master Go, who was said to have eliminated all 10 of them in mere seconds. Eat didn't correct anything. He just smiled and sent his thanks to the hero. In truth, these monsters were indeed dangerous, but if prepared correctly, they also made an extremely delicious dish, and Eat was sure his customer would love today's steak. However, upon hearing the word steak, the poor guest became a little anxious. It was usually an expensive dish, and he wasn't sure if he had enough money to pay for it. Meanwhile, Eat said nothing, silently taking a knife and cutting thick, even, and beautiful slices of meat. He seasoned them simply with salt and pepper, subtly yet elegantly, because in his opinion, good meat should speak for itself. While Eat was meticulously preparing this exquisite dish, let's rewind nearly 3 decades to when our young man suddenly woke up in a completely alien world. It was a cursed land teeming with dragons and monsters. In that place, flesh-eating creatures roamed every street. Every step was a bloody battle for survival. Initially, survival was almost impossible, but Eat was fortunate enough to have a rare opportunity. He possessed an extraordinary power, immense enough to make even notorious old dragons tremble. Eventually, he became strong enough to defeat even the Demon King, the tyrannical ruler of that world. And that victory earned him the greatest reward, a ticket back to Earth, the place he had always longed to return to. Unfortunately, the Earth he returned to was no longer the same. It had been ravaged by monsters no less than the world before. Yet nothing could stop Eat from pursuing the dream he had cherished for so many long years. A true retirement, a peaceful, quiet life no longer involved in bloodshed or battles. After 30 years of relentlessly fighting monsters and even the Demon King in that other world, Eat was too tired of the days of slaughter. He no longer wanted to train, no longer wanted to fight. But fortunately, the appearance of monsters on Earth also caused humanity to begin awakening its own hidden powers. That glimmer of light was the catalyst that opened a new era of counterattack for mankind. With the increasing emergence of new ascendants rising to protect humanity, Eat felt his role in battle was no longer necessary. Therefore, he chose to withdraw from the chaotic stage and open a small restaurant, becoming an ordinary chef. From now on, the only thing he wanted to do was cook delicious meals, bringing peace to himself and the guests who visited. As I recount this entire strange story, the Belto steak that Eat meticulously prepared is finally ready, a hot, mouth-wateringly fragrant piece of meat. It was steaming hot and neatly arranged on a clean white plate, looking incredibly tempting at first glance. The waiting man couldn't contain his craving. His eyes seemed ready to pop out as he gazed at the perfectly cooked meat, saliva starting to trickle from the corner of his mouth. He thought to himself, "Good heavens, this meal might just change my life." Unable to wait any longer, he hurriedly cut a bite-sized piece and brought it to his lips. He had no mind left for decorum. The moment the meat touched his tongue, his eyes widened in astonishment as an unexpected flavor washed over him like a tidal wave, sweeping away all remaining traces of the day's fatigue. The Belto's meat was so tender and rich, it stunned him. Its natural sweetness blended with a hint of spice and a slightly tangy aftertaste, creating an exquisite culinary symphony. That perfectly grilled steak seemed to soothe his very tired soul. Irresistibly, he quickly moved on to the second piece, as if the first had merely been the opening act to a magnificent concert. And so he continued to eat without pause, each cut a moment of enjoyment, each chew a moment of ecstasy. He ate one piece after another until nothing was left on the plate but traces of sauce. When the plate was clean, he leaned back in his chair, the sweet aftertaste still lingering in his mouth. And just then, as if a dam had broken, memories flooded his mind. Now it was time for him to face the reality of paying for the meal, even though it was so delicious it made one forget the world. Fortunately, Eat's restaurant had a special policy: first-time customers received a significant discount. This took the association representative by surprise. A 5-star meal, yet it was almost free? His earlier fatigue seemed to completely vanish, replaced by a light, refreshing feeling from the inside out. The man felt rejuvenated and silently promised himself he would return to this place to create more memories. However, he still insisted on paying the full price. Seeing his determination, Eat reluctantly agreed and only took $10, a symbolic figure more for hospitality than the actual value of the meal. Happily taking out his wallet to pay before leaving, this special guest made an important offer with a serious expression. He expressed his concern for Eat's safety. In these times, not everyone is an ascendant, and the world is still fraught with danger from monsters. To guard against any unforeseen events, he advised Eat, if anything happens, evacuate immediately. Don't hesitate. Safety always comes first. Not only that, but he also handed Eat a business card in case he needed assistance. He said, "It's truly moving to see such a scene in an area that was once desolate, now thriving again with cafes, markets, and eateries reopening." Before stepping out, he turned back to emphasize once more that Eat just needed to pick up the phone and call, and someone would help immediately. As the man left, Eat watched him silently, his heart full of contemplation. Even though he was a chef who had been through all sorts of battles, he deeply appreciated people like that, those who were still fighting silently to protect ordinary people like him. After that moving moment, Eat went back inside and tasted the steak he had made himself. Just one bite was enough to make him smile with satisfaction. The flavor, temperature, doneness, everything was perfect down to the last detail. Night fell. The light from the small kitchen shone through the glass window, creating a cozy scene, and our young man prepared to close another peaceful day in the life he had fought for with blood and tears. However, before closing up, he decided to make a light snack with the Beltos eggs he had carefully selected that morning. He began to wonder if there was any dish that could truly highlight the unique taste of these eggs. Suddenly, the door burst open violently. A strange man rushed in without a greeting. His face contorted with anger and started yelling at Eat. Of course, Eat had no idea what was happening and could only stare blankly at the man like an uninvited guest. From the jumbled and angry words, Eat gradually understood that this person had come to reclaim something he believed belonged to him. To understand the root of the issue, we need to go back a few hours to the traditional Seus M market, bustling with countless street vendors, selling ingredients everywhere. Eat, at that time, was strolling through the stalls looking for ingredients to stock his restaurant. Since the day monsters became rampant, traditional foods like meat and vegetables had become extremely scarce, forcing people to resort to monster meat as an alternative. However, many people still hesitated at the thought of including monster meat in their meals. Nevertheless, gradually, thanks to its surprisingly delicious taste and affordable price, monster meat began to become a common ingredient in cuisine. That was why the Cell Diamond Monster Market became so famous, as it offered all sorts of monster ingredients from rare to common. In one stall, Eat saw a vendor selling a batch of fresh Beltos eggs. However, even the seller couldn't be entirely sure of their origin, as the eggs of many monster species looked quite similar. But according to the Ascendant Association's temporary certification, they were classified as Beltos eggs. Before paying, Eat used one of his special skills, Insight, to confirm. It was a rare skill he had taken from Canis the Silver Dragon, who was once the lord of the northern mountain range in the old world where he used to fight. This ability allowed him to see the hidden parameters and details of any object, and had been an indispensable tool when he confronted the Demon King. A series of data appeared before Eat's eyes, revealing that among those eggs, only one was genuinely a Beltos egg. The rest belonged to other monster species. Thanks to this, Eat easily detected the seller's trick of mixing fake goods with genuine ones for profit. After carefully selecting, he paid for the necessary eggs. But then another peculiar egg caught his attention because his insight could not read any information from it at all. Realizing something was unusual, Eat decided to buy that mysterious egg as well. Upon returning home, he cracked a Beltos egg and immediately started cooking. He made a simple yet exquisite dish of scrambled eggs, perfectly utilizing the richness and characteristic flavor of the Beltos egg. The mouth-watering aroma and rich taste of the dish suddenly reminded him of the old days where meals were a luxury, and brotherhood was forged amidst life and death battles. The blend of Beltos egg and cow's milk created a soft, sweet, and rich texture, taking him back to cherished memories that had faded into the past. Closing his eyes to savor each bite, he felt as if he were reliving those bygone days. A poignant nostalgia crept into his heart as he thought of his comrades who had fallen. When the meal ended, his gaze turned back to the mysterious egg before which his insight was completely powerless. According to Eat's understanding, dragon artifacts usually couldn't be nullified by monsters of the same kind. Therefore, if his skill couldn't read the egg, it certainly wasn't an ordinary item. Perhaps that was why the insight artifact failed. That egg was clearly not normal. It was a dragon's egg. A crazy coincidence, but Eat had indeed unintentionally picked up a rare dragon egg. While Eat was still considering what dish to make from the egg, the restaurant door suddenly burst open. A red-haired man radiating an aggressive aura stormed in unannounced. He roared, demanding back what rightfully belonged to him. In that instant, Eat sensed something very unusual. Just like with the dragon egg, the insight artifact couldn't display any information about this stranger. At that moment, everything became clear. This person was a dragon in human form. When Eat calmly asked about his true identity, the red-haired man immediately flew into a rage. Flames erupted around his body as he angrily questioned how the human could know that. Eat then warned him to keep calm if he didn't want to burn down the entire restaurant. But the dragon insisted on an explanation. Not wanting his clean restaurant to turn into a pile of ashes, Eat had to admit he possessed the insight artifact, which allowed him to see the parameters of all creatures except dragons. The red-haired man reacted with immediate surprise, asking how Eat could have such a rare artifact. Eat just hoped that he also knew about this artifact, as it would make explaining everything easier. Meanwhile, the dragon began to feel uneasy at Eat's surprising composure when facing a dragon without a hint of fear. Then his gaze fell on the kitchen knife, a blade forged from green dragon scales, which Eat merely considered a normal cooking utensil. Next, his eyes landed on the intricately carved cutting board made from dragon bone. As a dragon, the red-haired man couldn't bear this insult, using parts of his kin as kitchenware. He roared, the flames around him burning brighter than ever. Eat just sighed, feeling tired, knowing he was about to face another troublesome situation. The dragon could no longer maintain his composure and launched a massive blue fireball towards Eat. But our young man didn't panic. He calmly picked up a nearby frying pan, an ordinary pan he used for frying eggs. Then he swung the pan, deflecting the fireball with a perfect flick of his wrist. Utilizing his divine speed, Eat rushed forward and slapped the dragon hard across the face with the same pan, a decisive and powerful blow. That strike unintentionally triggered buried memories in the dragon. A familiar voice from the past echoed in his mind. Everything flashed back to the past where the old world was still ruled by the Demon King. Eat had once appeared before the mighty Dragon King to demand his artifact. He was urgently hunting the Demon King and had no time for negotiations. At that time, the red-haired dragon was just a child, and his father was the true owner of the artifact. But when the father refused to give it up, the son understood that his family's fate was sealed because the person standing before them was Miro Lacus, a name that had once shaken the entire continent. Back in the present, Eat coldly ordered the dragon to clean the floor before things got out of control. Reluctantly, the dragon bowed his head, picked up the mop and bucket, and began to erase the scorch marks from the floor. As the dragon was silently scrubbing, Eat struck up a conversation asking where he came from. He was suspicious because the dragon knew so much about insight. Indeed, as the memory revealed, he came from the continent of the old world where Eat had confronted the Demon King. He had come here through a spatial rift. The mention of the continent made Eat suddenly realize that the monsters he had encountered recently must have come from there too. Eat then revealed his former identity. He was once Miro Lacus, but now in this world his name was Eat. At this point, the red-haired dragon was almost certain that Eat was the one who had confronted his father years ago. Under Eat's stern gaze, the scoundrel finally finished cleaning the restaurant. When the task was complete, Eat allowed him to leave with his dragon egg. But before he left, he couldn't help but ask a question. "Why didn't you return my father's artifact after defeating the Demon King?" Eat asked who his father was. The dragon politely replied, "Man-R." Our young man nodded slightly. He remembered that dragon's name very well. It was no surprise that the aura of the person standing before him today felt so familiar. R's son couldn't help but shudder when Eat called him closer. Seeing his fear, Eat gently reassured him, "I won't harm him. Anyway, I stopped fighting dragons 30 years ago." But the dragon didn't believe Eat looked anything like someone who had lived for 30 long years. Eat asked his real age, and he replied that he was over 50. Eat retorted that he was over 60 older than him. Of course, the dragon didn't believe it. Unless Eat was the child of an elf, there was no way someone over 60 could look so young. But then Eat made him turn pale by pointing out the arrogant nature of dragons, something that could only be corrected with appropriate punishment. The dragon immediately retorted, saying he didn't like being threatened at all, and confessed that dragons indeed knew fear, especially the fear of death. Eat took the opportunity to clear up the misunderstandings, weighing heavily between them. The dragon scale knife and the bone cutting board were not trophies. They were gifts. Eat admitted to having fought a few dragons, but had never killed one. As for the artifact from long ago, he couldn't return it because it had shattered during the battle with the Demon King. He sincerely apologized for the damage caused and invited the dragon for a drink to make peace. But to the dragon, that invitation was an insult. Sharing a drink with a human. The thought made him uncomfortable. However, in the end, that dragon got completely drunk from too much alcohol while our young man remained as sober as a monk. The dragon boasted that Eat was the first human in history to have the honor of drinking with a dragon. But he wasn't impressed, as this wasn't the first time he'd been called the first human in history for something. Anyway, he asked who had laid the egg, because clearly the dragon whelp was too young to do so. The red-haired fellow was a bit flustered by his directness, especially since male dragons can't lay eggs. It turned out the egg was his younger sibling. Not long ago, a spatial rift had appeared in their cave while their parents were away. Thus, both he and the egg got stuck in this world. Half a year had passed since that day. He then asked Eat about his journey. There were rumors in Espan that he had disappeared after defeating the Demon King. He was curious if Eat had gone straight back to Earth or somewhere else during that time. Eat replied that he had important business to attend to, and when it was done, he returned to Earth. The dragon's kin continued to ask more questions. Why was Eat in such a mediocre restaurant when he possessed the power to save the world? A human like him could easily take over the planet without breaking a sweat. It was crazy that he did nothing about the monsters, and even crazier that he had never thought of ruling the world. After all, humans were inherently power-hungry, war-loving, selfish, and arrogant. He still remembered when the Demon King disappeared, humans turned on each other instead of enjoying peace. Eat admitted that human nature was indeed like that, but he no longer cared. After 30 years of fighting, he was too tired, no longer craving power or fame. The young dragon didn't believe those words from a human, but Eat just told him to take good care of his only sibling. Yes, you could see how much the red-haired fellow loved his sibling by the way he held the egg in his hands. Not long after the egg hatched, and the little dragon girl finally broke free from her cramped shell to spread her wings and learn to fly. Eat asked the red-haired fellow if he had named the little girl yet. It seemed he hadn't thought about it, so for now he still called her newly hatched baby. Eat asked further, "Is she a boy or a girl?" The red-haired fellow grumbled in reply, "She's female." It seemed our young man was starting to grow fond of the little girl. Looking closely, she looked like a sparrow, just with a few small teeth, which made him think that dragons might be omnivores from birth. The red-haired fellow was clearly very happy to have an adorable little sister as a companion in this strange world. Speaking of the world, Eat asked if they had anywhere to call home on this planet. But he didn't answer immediately. Perhaps that meant they were just wanderers. As I guessed, my young man was about to invite them to stay at the restaurant, but only if they truly had nowhere else to go. Meanwhile, in another world on the continent, there was once a fierce storm that brought with it migrating demons. The scent of battle still lingered in every gust of wind, awakening nostalgic memories in a character with long, shining hair. That person happily whispered the name Miro last, remembering the last time they had drunk together. Back in our little restaurant, that young man had prepared a hamburger steak that looked truly appetizing. After feeding the two dragon siblings until they were full, he asked if they were about to leave. As part of the diner's custom, he didn't charge for the meal, even though it normally cost $10. Hearing this, the red-haired fellow curiously asked if the restaurant provided lodging, implying he was homeless. Even though he was a powerful dragon, inflation these days was more dangerous than a sharp sword. Eat understood his plight. Thrown into a strange world, a proud dragon would surely feel lonely. And for Eat, witnessing a weakened dragon was a rare sight. He believed that scene would drive scholars in another world mad. The son of Yunrek then offered a 4th-grade magic stone, a treasure even in the human world. But when Eat saw it was the fellow's memento, our young man couldn't help but laugh. As for the newborn dragon girl, she seemed to have a bottomless stomach and kept asking for more food. Eat continued to feed her, thinking that living in this world and taking care of a baby dragon was even harder than survival. In a way, he missed the old world, missed the voice of the friend he used to drink with. A tinge of regret crept into him as he would never see that girl again. Although he said he wouldn't let them stay, Eat had actually decided to let the two dragon siblings stay for a few days, free of charge, as a way to fill the loneliness in his own heart. The red-haired fellow felt pressured by how much the young man had helped him and didn't know how to repay the kindness. Eat thought for a moment, then pointed downwards, opening a spatial gate. A sub-dimension belonging to him. Kassam, an immortal elf, welcomed the king after so many days apart. I must say this elf was quite eccentric, and used to be a low-rank monster, but his special trait was that he couldn't die in the sub-dimension, and was the manager of Eat's dimensional domain. C.A. Sam respectfully called him king, but Eat didn't like royal titles. He kept things simple. C.A. Sam asked what he was looking for, and he requested a check on the number of magic stones remaining in the domain. The manager revealed they possessed an almost limitless number of magic stones, but of the highest grade ever. They only had exactly 5, along with 120 regular high-grade ones. Eat casually tossed. Key the red-haired dragon a 4th grade stone to store in the sub-dimension, and he took it without asking any questions. As the conversation was nearing its end, Eat suddenly remembered something important. Meanwhile, the red-haired dragon stood frozen speechless at the fact that even the highest-grade magic stones were worthless to this guy. Ka-Sam bowed politely, bidding farewell to his king before departing. He reminisced that he was just Eat an ordinary human when that was done. Our young man then began to assign the red-haired dragon Key a series of tasks to handle. The scene quickly shifted to the next day. The adorable baby dragon was sleeping soundly, looking so peaceful. Even if it were the end of the world outside, she would still be deep in her slumber. However, Eat was currently very annoyed with her foolish older brother, whose solution to everything was just to shoot fireballs. His goal was to teach the dragon to focus his fire breath on a specific target without incinerating everything around. He brought out a skewer of meat. The dragon carefully grilled the skewer until it turned a beautiful color. The result was perfect, exactly what Eat had hoped for. Key was also surprised when Eat pulled out a rapier from another dimension. Despite being used as a skewer, this sword was completely unaffected by dragon breath. That weapon was named Ra-Fel-Sat, after the talented dwarf blacksmith Ra-Fa-Fel, who had spent his entire life crafting divine weapons. This was one of the greatest treasures in the world. It was truly ironic that Eat used it as a kitchen utensil, while others would willingly kill each other just to possess it. The dragon was somewhat annoyed that he was misusing such a precious weapon, but Eat sarcastically remarked that at least he used what he had, unlike dragons who only knew how to hoard things without using them. Through that action, the red-haired fellow Key concluded that Eat's personality was indeed a world apart from that of dragons. By the way, do you remember the civil servant who appeared earlier? Choi was very happy to be back at the familiar restaurant. He was enjoying an exquisite dish prepared by the most talented chef around. Literally. He was also surprised to see that Eat had a new employee, which startled Key. On that occasion, Choi revealed that a new previously unknown dungeon had appeared under the subway tunnels. Because of this, Seodamun was recruiting ascendant hunters to deal with the threat. So what were dungeons, and how were they formed? Eat pondered that they were places that stored monsters, and also served as gates connecting different dimensions through spatial rifts. That was also how Eat had arrived in this world, similar to how Key son of Equin Rake Man R had arrived. He asked about the dungeon's difficulty, and learned it was at least level 5. This meant that Master Go Kim Sang-ho and the Genkaku team would be dispatched to handle the danger at Seodamun. He was the one who had appeared at the beginning of the story. In the Shinchan area, a person named Troll would lead the team, a name Eat himself had never heard. It turned out Seodamun was protected by the Mage Guild, while Shinchan was under the protection of the Ice Witch, who according to Eat's senses bore a resemblance to SDS in a Gaken. Anyway, Choi also mentioned that a backup team would be deployed as a precaution, which was why they needed more candidates. He sighed that every time he saw recruitment news for dungeons, his heart broke. Unfortunately, not everyone was qualified to become an ascendant. Only the most elite had the chance. But most of them had families and couldn't participate due to the high risks. In a way, he thought living a normal life was better having a stable job without risking one's life. Realizing he was late, he ended the conversation and thanked Eat for the wonderful meal as always. Kai even felt proud to receive praise for the dish he helped make. Key wondered if he should go out and buy more Idaho meat to reinvest in the business. Thinking this, he went to the market to buy ingredients. While walking and chatting with the butcher, Eat heard an announcement recruiting for a raid group. The person making the announcement from afar looked very much like someone he had met before. It was Sang-ho, a member of the Mage Guild, a second-rank ascendant warrior. Clearly, what Choi said was true. They were indeed looking for people. Speaking of groups in this world, attack teams were called raid groups, just like the system in the RPG games Eat used to love. This world was now no different from a fantasy game, so the rules were very easy to understand. But that wasn't all. If you've played the game Marvel Revance recently, you might recognize that there are many DPS players, while tanks and healers are extremely scarce. This situation also occurred here. Damage-dealing roles were saturated, while reliable tanks and healers were extremely rare. Therefore, not everyone had the chance to join a raid team, especially DPS players. That scene reminded Eat of the civil servant's lament about the difficult lives of those who weren't outstanding. But at that moment, Eat thought that fellow should worry about himself first instead of others. At the same time, a man rummaged through his wallet and realized there wasn't a single coin left. His wallet had been empty even before. He was disappointed and sad because there was nothing left to do. He returned home in a dejected mood looking for Key but couldn't find him. However, the kitchen was surprisingly clean, a promising sign. Suddenly, the man from before entered Eat's restaurant. He came in with a worried expression. The man was even timid when he asked for a bowl of ramen. However, Eat, being a kind-hearted person, smiled and said it was absolutely no problem. In his mind, he silently reflected on how ramen had always been a cheap option for over 3 decades, even though inflation had made simple dishes much more luxurious. The man hesitantly asked the price of a bowl of ramen, leading Eat to gently reveal it was only $2. Hearing that, the man's face lit up like a child's, and he immediately ordered 5 bowls without hesitation. Eat couldn't help but be surprised, genuinely impressed by this strange customer's kung appetite. But a feeling in him warned that something was off. Eat silently activated his insight skill, allowing him to see the other person's true intentions, and discovered this person's class was Food God. Although it seemed strange, Eat was quite familiar with this skill because a former teammate had possessed it. It was an ability that enhanced strength through eating. If the user continuously consumed high-level monsters, they could achieve a physique and strength comparable to Mr. Olympia. However, this skill was very difficult to develop in the early stages and only truly manifested when digesting high-ranking creatures. The possessor also had to frequently face hunger, though that would gradually improve with level and skill proficiency. Nevertheless, Eat realized that this guy was still too weak to tap into the true potential of his class. With a touch of madness, Eat decided to serve him a super large bowl of ramen. It came with grilled thao meat, a luxurious side dish. What was special was that Eat even added the expensive thao meat as a complimentary gift. This small act somewhat reflected Eat's kind heart, understanding that some were struggling to survive in this harsh world. If Eat had a different personality, he might have ignored him. But this time he hoped it would help the man grow stronger. He also revealed that the first meal of the day was free, although he only charged for the meat, not the ramen. The man didn't hesitate and immediately tasted a piece of the fragrant meat. Its exquisite flavor made him feel like he was melting with every breath. He could hardly believe meat could be so tender and flavorful. Next, he carefully picked up a large mouthful of noodles and tried them. And just like that, he finished the entire bowl, leaving nothing behind. Every strand of noodle, every piece of meat was savored as if it were his last. His mood clearly improved. The man bowed his head, thanking the wonderful chef for his rare kindness. As he was about to take out his wallet to pay, a pile of things from his bag unexpectedly fell to the floor. The sudden noise made everyone in the restaurant turn their eyes towards him. From the pile, Eat quietly picked up a tie and then accepted the payment as if nothing had happened. The man hurriedly left, but not without promising he would return. Watching his receding figure and old-fashioned attire, Eat had a strange premonition. He wondered if this fellow carried a tie just to impress someone. That story made Eat understand even more about human difficulties in troubled times. Not long after, the poor man accidentally stumbled upon a space portal while strolling down the street. The portal hovered in mid-air, emitting a strange light as if signaling imminent danger. The public immediately panicked and evacuated, while the army urgently set up barricades around the area. And that very man was also called to battle as an awakened. However, when asked about his rank, his answer disappointed the entire support team. He explained that he only had skills related to eating, which were completely useless in a high-level battle like this. Even the strongest warriors had been seriously injured, so they couldn't risk bringing along mediocre awakened individuals. The man was asked to retreat to a safe place, but as he turned around, he was surprised to see one of the healers was his own daughter. Shocked, he immediately ran to her with a worried face. He scolded Mayan for venturing into such a dangerous place when she should have been at school focusing on her studies. Mayan was confused as to why her father was there, even seeming not to need his help. She angrily scolded him, saying that, apart from his ability to eat and do menial tasks, he couldn't help with anything. He didn't even visit home, so what was he worried about now? Her heart was filled with resentment, not only because of the burden of tuition fees, but also because his appearance made her look even worse in front of everyone. As she pushed him away, the box containing the tie fell to the ground, a testament to his hopeless attempt to impress. Megan coldly reminded her father that he didn't even have a weapon to defend himself. Just then, Mage Sang-ho appeared and quickly neutralized the threat from the dungeon. Although the battle was over, the aftermath was still severe and required the help of healers. Therefore, Mei Zhen immediately ran to treat the injured without looking back. Standing in the now quiet battlefield, the father felt completely helpless and utterly useless. The scene shifts to our young man Eat, as he quietly cleans his sword while sharing his thoughts on the class system in this world. A class represents a specific type of ability, he said. To achieve mastery, a learner must go through 5 stages from basic to master. He continued to explain the school system dedicated to the awakened, where they were trained much like an academy, but more specialized. Once they mastered the first stage of their awakened class, each person would choose a second class based on their living environment and personal orientation. A rare few could master 2 classes simultaneously, placing them at a superior level, but that required unimaginable hardship beyond the reach of most. Eat added that if someone unfortunately possessed a weak ability, the harsh truth was they had no choice but to find what best suited them. However, a 6th class existed, one that only Eat had achieved in his last fierce battle. Since that moment, he couldn't progress further, and he concluded that it was a limit he had to accept. Just then, the red-haired dragon rushed over to find Eat, her face full of urgency, reporting an important event. Her little sister, the tiny dragon like a gummy candy, had finally uttered her first words. The name Cool rang out, surprising Eat, because the little dragon had never been named before. Perhaps Khan, the large dragon, had officially named her little sister. In innocent joy, Cool naively called Eat Dad. Making time seem to stop for a moment. That word melted his heart. The little girl's cuteness was irresistible. It turned out the little dragon had named herself Cool to assert that she was a part of this world, a conscious individual. As Cool repeatedly called him Dad, Eat smiled gently and patted her head, responding to her pure affection. He shared that dragons were very special because from birth they were granted the ability to master a class, something impossible for humans. They were all curious about what class Cool possessed. Suddenly, an unexpected guest appeared at the restaurant's door, the man who had faced difficulties before. He ordered the exact same dish he had eaten last time. While Eat sat down to talk with him, Khan began preparing the food in the kitchen. The man started to tell the story of his painful encounter with his daughter when she tried to join a raid group to win a scholarship with her healing abilities. Seeing his daughter struggle, his heart broke. He couldn't even help, because he was a useless awakened with no power, no status, just a burden. Conversely, his daughter possessed excellent healing abilities despite her young age. A 3rd-class awakened with outstanding potential. The girl had all the elements of talent and scores just waiting for official recognition from the association. When the father intended to attend his daughter's class observation, he couldn't afford a decent suit, so he chose a cheap tie, the only item he could buy with his meager budget. He gradually came to believe he shouldn't go anymore, being a useless father, unable to support his daughter. In desperation, the man confessed that despite his terrible situation, he still felt hungry. Eat listened to everything with an open mind. He knew that this man was an awakened with food-related abilities who needed to eat a lot to activate his latent powers. Suddenly, Eat stood up and approached his staff. He asked a strange question. Would it be okay if I fattened him up? This made Khan turn pale, thinking Eat intended to cook the guest like a monster. Eat laughed, reassuring him it was just a joke. Then he noticed Cool's skin was shedding during her development. An idea flashed in his mind. He intended to use the precious dragon skin, even though Khan complained wanting to keep it as a souvenir. The dish was still prepared quickly, and finally a huge portion of ramen atahao was served, fragrant and irresistibly tempting. The man recognized it as the dish he had eaten before, and Eat cheerfully told him to eat his fill. Eat sat there quietly watching the man eat chopstick by chopstick until his stomach was full. After finishing his meal, he stood up to pay. Before leaving, the man bowed his head and thanked Eat for listening when he needed it most. Eat saw him to the door, leaving him with a philosophical message that everyone should remember. Life is already hard for everyone, he said, but it's easier if we persevere with what we can do well. He encouraged the man to keep trying, and that this restaurant and Eat himself would always be a support if he needed it. Eat gave a warm smile as he saw him out. He didn't tell anyone that he had secretly added dragon skin to the dish, which could greatly affect the man's development in the future. Khan, who witnessed the whole thing, didn't understand why Eat would help a stranger so much. Eat patted Cool's head and said, "It's because of my father who lived a hard life, and perhaps that's what makes me unable to ignore it." In the next scene, the man quietly returns home after a long day. He opens the door and sees his daughter Meijin sound asleep. He notices the tie he had bought had been brought back by her and placed carefully in her room. The poor girl burst into tears, apologizing for the hurtful words she had said to her father. He gently hugged his daughter also, apologizing, his voice trembling. He realized he had done many shameful things, had made his daughter live a life full of pressure. But despite everything, through all the hardships and bitterness, he still loved her more than anything in the world. The next morning, Manhwa woke up and hurriedly ran to a new workplace full of determination. As soon as he arrived, he was panting from running. Meanwhile, the recruiter asked him to present his personal registration card. Surprisingly, the person in charge was Kim Manhwa, someone with whom he had a rather poor impression from a previous mission. That time, Manhwa had failed miserably and collapsed when an incident occurred in the hibernation area of Yuno Dungeon. If that situation repeated itself, it would definitely be a big problem. Fortunately, thanks to Team Kaku's timely rescue, the damage was minimized. Now the recruiter just hoped Manhwa could do his best, especially with the portal bubbling with dark energy above their heads. Meanwhile, the beautiful morning relaxed Manhwa a bit as he walked to the designated area. Then a chaotic scene suddenly appeared before his eyes, stunning him. Even Mage Sang-ho, who had faced many dangers, couldn't believe the situation was this tense. According to intelligence, a group of ascendants ranging from level 5 to 7 had entered the dungeon earlier. But the real nightmare began when an unrecorded hidden boss suddenly appeared where Meijin's father Manhwa was carrying out his mission. Inside the dungeon, the landscape resembled a primeval forest where Manhwa was quickly ambushed by a dinosaur identical to a raptor from Jurassic Park. With excellent reflexes, Manhwa delivered a direct uppercut, felling the raptor in a single blow. His strength erupted strangely, as if motivation and energy were surging from deep within. A member of the group suddenly pointed forward where a spatial rift was appearing amidst the trees. The rift emitted chaotic energy, warning that something extremely dangerous was approaching. The ground shook violently, as if an earthquake was occurring. Just then, a giant Tyrannosaurus Rex roared its cry as loud as thunder. The roar shook the entire forest, causing everyone to panic. This was the hidden boss, a creature that only appeared when the space within the dungeon was fractured from the inside. And as in all records, hidden bosses always led to disaster. Now the T-Rex was destroying everything with its frenzied rage. While everyone fled in terror, Manhwa's eyes suddenly spotted something important. Mana crystals dropped from the creature he had just defeated. They were extremely rare and valuable. The drive for survival and his aspirations for his daughter made him recklessly rush forward to collect them. It was an insanely dangerous act, but Manhwa couldn't resist. The giant T-Rex saw him and immediately charged, preparing to crush him. Ironically, instead of killing him on the spot, the monster only headbutted his rear, sending him flying like a flung ball, sent flying far away. Manhwa felt how pathetic and weak he was. He had entered the dungeon hoping to earn some money for his daughter, but the truth was, he was putting his life on the line. In his helplessness, the image of his daughter Meijin appeared in his mind like a final ray of light amidst despair. He remembered the moment he first held her in his arms, his heart filled with love and regret. His daughter's sincere words and gaze became the motivation for him to stand up. He realized that if he died here, Meijin would have to face the cruel world out there alone. With rekindled steel in his spirit, he stood up, trembling but firm, and faced the T-Rex directly. Despite confronting a creature many times more ferocious and powerful, Manhwa did not back down. He refused to accept the cruel reality that he had no chance of winning. His indomitable spirit blazed like fire. Manhwa channeled all his strength into a decisive punch. That punch aimed straight for the monster's mouth like a critical blow. And then an unexpected phenomenon occurred. He was notified of a level up immediately after the strike. He had evolved to a new level, no longer feeling hungry, pained, or weak. Even the T-Rex was stunned by the sudden transformation of this small human. It decided to end it all with a powerful lunge to swallow its opponent. But unbelievably, Manhwa used both hands to stop the giant monster's charge. Though being pushed back, he held his ground, not allowing himself to lose. He was determined to hold this defensive position for as long as possible, waiting for reinforcements. And then, good news arrived. The Mage Master Go and his team appeared just in time after receiving a warning about the hidden boss. The sight of an ordinary man stopping a second-ranked T-Rex astounded the entire team. Master Go immediately praised Manhwa for his extraordinary courage. He even expressed his intention to ask for Manhwa's contact information after the battle ended. Upon examination, they discovered that Manhwa's skill set had evolved into the Shin class, meaning he could now not only defend like a tank, but also possessed offensive power like a DPS. A rare combination of abilities not unlike combining Mr. Fantastic and Wolverine from Marvel. As for our young man, Eat, he was silently observing from the outside, his face lit with joy knowing that Manhwa had evolved to Class 3. It was a good thing overall, because thanks to the timely support of the Mage Guild, the entire team managed to evacuate, buying enough time to fight, and then safely return to the restaurant. Meanwhile, our adorable little gummy bear Cool was yawning widely from sleepiness, her small tail wrapped around Eat, as if seeking support. News of the hidden boss's defeat quickly spread everywhere. In it, Manhwa was hailed as the hero who saved the team from annihilation. He had bravely resisted the boss's special skill, breaking his limits to ascend to Class 3. He was honored as the MVP of the raid, appearing proudly in newspapers, and especially in the radiant eyes of his daughter, who had never been prouder. The Ascendant Association also didn't ignore him. They decided to give him a worthy evaluation and a large compensation for his contributions in the recent raid. Eat gently picked up the little dragon girl, wondering if she was secretly reading the newspaper as her weight seemed to have increased considerably. Nevertheless, she still hugged him and called him Dad in an incredibly sweet way. Although Eat had tried to deny that role many times, her innocent, sparkling eyes completely defeated him. He could never win against this unexpected daughter. Meanwhile, the news continued to report on another incident causing public uproar. A strange thief was giving merchants a headache. He was rampant in the Seodamun area, showing a peculiar preference for shiny objects. Moreover, he had been continuously stealing low-grade mana crystals at an alarming rate, to the point where the association was forced to intervene. The broadcast ended with a warning to be wary of this thief, until he was caught. Eat, however, seemed quite interested in this story, as if it were an entertainment program. He even froze when Cool brought him a cool glass of water, an unexpected act of kindness that also made viewers feel a little worried. But before Eat could drink, Key rushed in to intervene immediately, like a hero in the nick of time. The reason was that the glass of water contained countless bacteria, a detail Eat couldn't have expected. It turned out Cool had learned about well water from some illustrated book. It sounded harmless, but the surprise was that she couldn't distinguish between well water and toilet water. Eat's expression instantly changed to, "What the?" in a split second, realizing he was just a second away from drinking that deadly glass of water. The humorous atmosphere hadn't even settled when the door opened again, signaling Choi's third visit to the restaurant. This time, he was greatly surprised by the kalguksu Eat had just made. Its flavor was much richer than before. Not long after, Manhwa also arrived, but this time he looked very different. He wasn't alone. He brought a friend. It was the captain of the Mage Guild, who had heard many stories about the restaurant and the mysterious owner behind it. Choi immediately sprang to his feet with a mixture of surprise and respect, unable to hide the excitement on his face. In contrast, the Mage Guild captain seemed a bit disappointed to find an association representative eating in a place like this. That representative was equally surprised to learn that Manhwa had a close relationship with the Mage Guild. Moreover, Manhwa now had a completely new identity, the Red Shin Warrior, who had just performed excellently in a recent raid. From the conversation, Eat realized that after doing something outstanding, people were given a new name associated with their reputation. Manhwa couldn't hide his gratitude towards Eat, who had extended a welcoming hand when he had nothing. Eat also frankly shared that he had been looking forward to Manhwa's visit, and as always, ramen was the familiar choice for this young man. As for the Mage Guild captain, he also wanted to try the same dish, and the food was quickly served. The meal was brought out, and Manhwa finished it in one go, as if it were a familiar thing he had been waiting for a long time. Manhwa's refined palate impressed the captain, who nodded in approval. After the meal, he gently advised Manhwa to visit his daughter's school. Since it would take a while to digest, he allowed Manhwa a day off, no need to linger. And so, Manhwa left. Eat was silently impressed by the healthy working relationship between the two men, a rare mutual respect and understanding. But then a strangely quiet atmosphere enveloped the restaurant. Eat turned around and found the captain dozing off in his chair, a rare and somewhat amusing sight. The next scene, the atmosphere immediately became more tense with a fiery interaction between the Mage Guild captain and Eat. The captain was enraged to learn that Eat had dared to touch a divine creature and anger it, a taboo. That creature, a monster exuding a divine aura, flashed a sinister smile and prepared to unleash a fierce flame.